Hi, everyone. I'm pleased to be here with you. My name is Andrea Fumagalli. I'm coming from the acquisition of DF Labs. We joined the big Sumo Logic family in May this year. And today I will be presenting how to leverage playbooks for implementing automation with a tool that we launched a few weeks ago that's named Cloud SOAR, and it represents the SOAR provided within the Sumo Logic platform. I'm currently Senior Director of Engineering here, and I'm responsible for supporting, let's say, customers, let's say either the pre-sales and customers adopting this technology. I have a sort of, unfortunately for me, 20 years of experience in cybersecurity and SOAR implementations. I've been with DF Labs for the past 10 years, now with Sumo Logic for the past 4 months. It's been a very exciting experience. I've been working with multinational companies, government, Fortune 500 companies from all over the world, and it's always a new experience in adopting and helping to adopt the SOAR. SOAR is a very flexible tool. The concepts are pretty standard. Concept of having maybe integrations with external technologies, having playbooks, having dashboards, and let's say all these are pretty standard concepts, but the way they are implemented with the different customers, it's always a different story. Very interesting, amazing, and the results that you can achieve are sometimes very impressive. Today, I want to take you through some of the basics. What are the main challenges for the teams working in SecOps? How we can leverage our platform for modernizing the SOC, and what are the main features and benefits of our platform. And finally, I want to take you through a real demo and show you playbooks in real life. What is this famous entity named the playbooks? How automation and orchestration can be implemented in real life? How can we orchestrate actions in external technologies with the benefit of the open integration framework? And finally, just a quick overview on the dashboard, because monitoring and measuring success and metrics is something that it's always considered important in all the organizations. I'm gonna go and disable my webcam for the sake of the bandwidth, and therefore let's dive into immediately how you can leverage a SOAR to improve your success. First of all, let's identify what are the SecOps challenges. Typically, our, I would say, ideal user is a SOC and the analysts working in a SOC, but sometimes also blue teams, red teams, and the overall, let's say, community of security, cybersecurity professionals. All of them have in mind one metric, which is to minimize the response time. Minimize response times means to reduce the background noise, focus energies on the real attacks, improve the efficiency, and reduce the attack surface as quick as possible. Second issue is to manage the analyst fatigue. Analysts are overwhelmed by, let's say, a big bunch of continuous alerts coming from many different detection technologies. They always suffer kind of resource shortage, sometimes also skill shortage. So having a tool able to help them implement the standard operating processes, which are usually named as SOP, is very, very important and fundamental. The third big challenge is to improve efficiency, optimization, and consistency, especially in terms of being able to reapply standard approved workflows and ensure compliance with the appropriate regulation. The big benefit of the Cloud SOAR is the ability to process automatically, let's say, all the incoming alerts, reduce the number of false positives, and identify what are the real threats, the real issues that require attention from the SOC team. Then only these few alerts, usually the ones that really matter, they will be processed by a Cloud SOAR platform going through the initial triage till the final conclusion of the incident, which is typically the containment, remediation, and aftermath. Adopting a SOAR is a journey, and customers should be aware that this implies changing the paradigm of the resources working in the SOC. Traditionally, analysts have been always busy with manual tasks, repetitive and mundane tasks, spending maybe a consistent portion of their time in preparing reporting, and finally, performing also the real core activity, which is the enrichment and the containments. So these were the traditional activities. Now, adopting a modern SOC, moving to a modern SOC, leveraging the Cloud SOAR, of course, we have to change their responsibilities. They need to do more governance. They need to check what was done by the SOAR, decide if they need to add additional steps, maybe additional analysis, and finally, they have to take decisions. And of course, manage the escalation whenever this is required. So moving from a very repetitive set of activities role to a sort of coordination roles. With our Cloud SOAR, we have a series of connectors that are available off of the shelf to interact with the external technologies for implementing the orchestration. This is one of the core functionality of our platform. So whatever is the technology that the customer has adopted, we have a connector. With just a few clicks, this connector can be enabled inside Cloud SOAR, configured, and specific actions are made available. So in total, we have, with all the connectors, we have thousands and thousands of actions. We have over 228 connectors available right now. They're all published in a community, so they are available for all the customers as, let's say, free-to-use add-ons that they can simply adopt. And with these technologies, we can manage typically cyber incidents case, but also non-cyber cases. For example, we recently expanded in the IoT area, OT technologies, and we can help to resolve and automate also use cases not natively related to cyber. Of course, the big benefit is the concept of daemon and triggers that can be used to initiate automation whenever specific events are triggered or happening. And this is a benefit because we don't need to rely on maybe an analyst that has to be aware about what to do. This is the architecture of Cloud SOAR. You can find on the left-hand side the different data sources. They are used as sources for alerts, typically, of course, the CM, and we have a native integration with CSE, our Cloud CM. We can receive email. Cloud SOAR can receive generic syslog messages, can receive tickets from an external ticketing system, or web forms from typically the intranet or the web portal. It exposes also APIs that can be invoked from external technologies. And finally, of course, we have the user who are allowed to create incidents manually, or we can ingest feeds from the cyber threat intelligence sources and have incidents automatically created when specific feeds satisfy selection criteria. For example, all feeds related to a possible ransomware should be analyzed. Therefore, corresponding incidents will be created, assigning tasks to the analyst or performing automated enrichment. The big concept that we have at this stage is the OAF daemons. Daemons are small pieces of programs that can be created to monitor specific sources, specific conditions, and create incidents automatically inside Cloud SOAR. On the right-hand side, you see the typical actions that will be implemented inside the playbook, because once the alert is inside the Cloud SOAR tool, an incident will be created automatically, assigning the most appropriate team, activating the relevant playbooks. And inside playbooks, you might have enrichment actions, mitigation, containment, which are usually implemented as machine-to-machine integrations. You can have custom integrations. We can interact with custom systems, maybe proprietary systems developed by the customers. And of course, we can also interact with managed security service provider, because we have customers relying on external MSSP. And finally, of course, manual tasks. The different actions are represented with a color coding, so different colors for different type of actions. And the playbook looks like a graphical flow. Here you see an example where you can mix actions and operators. And of course, the benefit is that you can implement the specific procedure, the specific process, which is existing with the customer. And this will be executed automatically when the specific conditions trigger, then the full workflow will be executed. Here, of course, we have also the concept of supervised automation, which is something that we propose also as progressive automation, where some actions can be conditioned to a feedback requested to the user. So you can have all the enrichment done automatically. You might have the remediation already coded as to be executed automatically. And in between, you can just ask the user, hey, do you confirm you want to proceed with mitigating into the firewall, into the DNS, into the web gateway, or whatever it is. Otherwise, for those customers that feel very mature with their security program, typically we develop fully automated playbooks, and the whole process is completed in a matter of seconds or minutes. Here you see an example of one of the very popular case, which is implemented with all the customers, the phishing playbook. Of course, the alert is an incoming email, which is enriched with a few technologies, for example, geolocating the suspect URL, navigating on the suspect URL to see the look and feel of that page. Then notifications are dispatched in the form of emails to notify the duty analyst or the security teams or any of the leadership team. And then conditions are evaluated, maybe comparing thresholds, comparing reputation, and taking decisions. Once all the enrichment is completed, we reach the step of the supervision from the user. So a question is posted to the user, to the analyst, asking, do you have any preference for the mitigation? And when the answer is provided by the analyst, of course, the mitigation is executed automatically. So they don't need to remember exactly the commands for connecting into the firewall console and block an IP. That's the old scenario. Now they have just to concentrate reviewing which was the result of the enrichment, decide that we need to block it in checkpoint firewall, and then it will be done all automatically by the system. And finally, maybe we want to have a step for the final review. Once this is confirmed, the playbook is completed. And the benchmark, this is a real benchmark in production with most of our customers, it's around 4 minutes. So the big challenge is ask a SOC, I mean a traditional SOC with manual operators, to complete a final enrichment, I mean the final enrichment and remediation for a phishing case in 4 minutes, almost impossible. All the activity which are pending for a user are displayed in the SecOps dashboard. And the SecOps dashboard represents the central pane of glass where every user knows, becomes aware of its or her to-do list. So here you see what are the incidents where you have been involved. You see the tasks where activity is pending on your side, and you see the user choices. Tasks are represented by orange, dark red are the user choices. So user choices where you have to provide an answer. And from the SecOps dashboard, you can interact with the system. So analysts can live all day long only working from this section. They will receive tasks, they can review the task, decide for the appropriate answer. Even same applies for the user choices, and everything will be applied back into the corresponding playbook and incident. If they want to have additional details, of course, they can deep dive into that specific incident and see additional details of the context.
Andrea, I'm going to pause for just a sec because there's just a couple of questions coming through on the chat. And sorry to pause, but let's just address them now, maybe.
Absolutely.
If you have to do it.
First question is, Cloud SOAR is integrated into Sumo now? The answer is yes, of course. We released the official version fully integrated in August. So it's already part of the platform, and the demo that I will provide you is exactly from the Sumo platform. So we have a deep integration with Sumo Logic CIP, with CSC. We ingest alerts from CSC, enrich those alerts, mitigate them, and report back feedback to CSC. So even the analyst working in CSC, of course, they can have an idea of what was done into the Cloud SOAR, even if they don't have connection into the Cloud SOAR interface. Next question is, do playbooks support Terraform, etc.? We have a series of different integrations. Terraform is one of the integration in roadmap. So we are in the process of completing the implementation. We have a series of other tools specifically for the forensic analysis. But yes, the answer is it is available. I mean, many other technologies, we have integration with OpenText, NKs. We have integration with all the tools in AWS and VMware and so on for starting up, booting VMs and so on for performing the different type of analysis. What is the language behind the playbooks? Actually, playbooks are built only through the graphical wizard. So we don't have a scripting language. You build the playbooks just drag and dropping the different items, actions, or let's say operators. I will show you in the real life demo. And playbooks can be either exported or imported. We have, again, in the community, we have a repository also for playbooks. So you can find either, let's say, integrations and playbooks already available. I think I can show you. This is the community still branded with DF Labs. We are in the process of rebranding it as Sumo Logic. Here, as you can see, we have a bunch of integrations. This is the section where we have the different integrations, and you can see all of them. You can search through them. And for each one, of course, you can see what are the actions that have been implemented. So, for example, if we go here and we want to search for example, the CSC integration, you see that we have a series of actions that can be invoked that will work back with CSC, ingesting or updating details of the insights. And you can simply download this module and import it into Cloud SOAR, and you're ready to go. We apply the concept of the plugins, browser plugins, just to give you an idea. Regarding and here we are speaking about 228 integrations. These are growing continuously. Another integration that we are consolidating is with volatility, again, for completing analysis. For the playbooks, we have 117 playbooks ready off of the shelf. Again, we have a catalog describing one by one, and then you have the different playbooks presented, starting from very simple ones to very sophisticated one. You can download them and import them into the tool, and you're ready to use it. Okay, and then I think we can continue with this with the presentation. Now, another important section is the alert triage section, which is inside Cloud SOAR. We typically apply the playbooks to the concept of alerts when they are converted to incidents. Once they are converted to incidents, they will be considered by the metrics, but we can also apply automation, which means playbooks, on triage events. So triage events are alerts which are qualified, but with a possible high value of, let's say, false positive ratio compared to the real incidents. So we want to first triage them and then decide we want to escalate it or not to become real incidents. Only when escalated to become incidents, they will be effectively considered by the metrics. So this is very important in those areas, for example, the financial area, electronic payments, credit cards transaction, and so on, where they want to stay on safe side. They want to, let's say, analyze even those type of transactions that probably they are legit, but they are above a certain threshold. So they might be a big issue in case they are a real fraud. So on the other hand, you don't want to consider thousands of incidents and then declare that 90% of them is just false positive. So that's why we suggest to use the triage module. Triage, do the automated triage of the alerts, take a decision, either manual or automated, escalate them to incidents, and they will be included into the dashboard only at that stage. So the three major takeaways of this quick overview on the Cloud SOAR is, first of all, that the Cloud SOAR helps you save money and boost results. You have the investment in the technology, but you have a big redemption for the years to come, because all incidents that have been automated will be processed automatically, saving hours and hours of SOC analysts, reducing the possible number of human errors, and applying a very standardized and compliant approach. The second takeaway is that the response automation is the best investment to maximize your defense strategy. Nobody want to adopt Cloud SOAR for reducing the head counts. We don't want to substitute with Cloud SOAR existing real analysts, but we want to improve the quality of their activity, the result that is provided by them. So having them moved to a decision role instead of a mundane, a set of mundane tasks. So evaluating the overall situation of the incident, taking the proper decision, and helping the company with their experience as much as possible is definitely what we want to maximize, instead of having a bunch of analysts just, let's say, looking up IPs, looking up URL, or performing URL reputation. And the third big takeaway is that it's applicable to all industries. Years ago, we started only processing cybersecurity incidents. Nowadays, we process a series of different, let's say, investigations. For example, analyzing all the connections coming from the VPN, from remote through the VPN. This might appear something like not related to cyber, but actually it's a good case where we automated, and the customer has a great insight on all these connections. And this helps to identify possible attacks like user intrusions, user compromise, brute force, and so on. Now, I would jump now to the real demo, and I invite you to post your questions maybe in the chat, and at the end I will keep the last 5 minutes maybe to answer all questions. Now, here, let me start from what is the expected result. This is CSE. What we want to have is that we want to have incidents created in maybe Cloud SOAR when alerts are generated here in CSE, and we want to have those incidents maybe automatically enriched. So in this section, which is the enrichment of the insight, usually the users have the details that have been enriched by CSE or the details that have been imported from Cloud SOAR. We want this to be done automatically. So the concept is that here in Cloud SOAR, we have a series of alerts which are coming. We have the dashboard, the SecOps dashboard, where we have the list of the activities that are in charge of the different investigators, and each one corresponds to a specific incident. If we want to go into the incident, we have just to click here, and this is the incident. So we have all the details there, characteristics of the incident. We have a series of additional widgets describing, for example, the status, the ownership, what's the team that has been involved, who are the guys involved, and so on. And then we have the section with the playbook. So the playbook is exactly what was done, what has been executed for a specific alert. And where is the alert coming from? It's coming from CSE, identified by the Insight ID. And of course, this was enriched. And this is the ID of the insight that has been enriched. So if we go back and we search, for example, here, let me search inside the insights here. You will see that this is the insight that has been processed inside 3572, which should be exactly this one inside 3572. It is represented by a unique ID, which is used as a key inside CSC. It refers to a specific entities, which is this one. And you see that the entity is migrated over into Cloud SOAR, and then it's enriched. And then when we go inside this insight and we check, for example, the enrichment, you will see here that this was done by CSC as a result of the correlation inside correlation and enrichment inside CSC, but this was coming from Cloud SOAR, declaring, hey, this is the related IP, and it has been detected as non-malicious because 0 engines reported it as non-malicious. And here you have the full workflow that has been automatically executed. You see that the playbook is composed by a series of steps. Results are displayed here. So once the action is executed and the results are ingested back from CSC, because this is the action enriching the insight, querying back CSC. So you see, get insight details is one of the action that we developed with integration with CSC, accessing CSC and returning back the result. Results are displayed here in the form of JSON. You can navigate through them. You have all the different fields, all the details. Usually, these are the info that are very important for the SOC analysts. And you have everything here. You don't have to connect back to this interface and see the details. They have been ingested here. Once they are ingested, they become actionable. So they can be used maybe by the next action. You see the output of the previous action, get insight details, which is the first action here. The entity, output entity name, is used as input of this one. And this action is executed, leveraging the output of the previous one. So that's the way how we like to build playbooks to propagate the different results, complete the enrichment, execute specific steps. And when the final step is executed, you see this section, Cloud SOAR IP reputation, this is propagated back into the CSC. So analysts working only from here will have the chance to see exactly what was derived by Cloud SOAR without going into the details. What is the process that has been performed? How has been enriched? Which sources, external sources have been used, and so on. This is all masked. They can simply leverage results. Another option is that they can create incidents manually, starting from here. They can decide, hey, this is an insight. I want to escalate it to become an incident. So they can click here, select what's the template that they want to use, and then create the incident. So this way, it is a manual escalation in case we don't have any automation rule ingesting automatically this insight. So this is the overall objective of adopting a Cloud SOAR. And as you can see here, the green actions are enrichment. Most of the activities done by the SOC is typically lots of enrichment, and then finally taking a decision on the mitigation here or there. So it's fundamental to automate as much as possible the time-consuming tasks. And here, with the different enrichment steps, you can configure what are the resources. So now let's jump into the section for designing a playbook. So a playbook is typically, let's say, a workflow created with this graphical tool. Of course, you have the option to create it from scratch. You can reuse any of the ones that we provide. It can be done, all of them, through this graphical wizard. Anytime you can edit the existing boxes, maybe changing the values, the fields that you want to use, and so on. Or you can add a new action. When adding a new action, of course, we have different type of actions. Remember the diagram I showed you with the architecture describing that we can define automated enrichment, we can define remediations, and we can define manual tasks, and so on. this is where we define these different type of actions. So first of all, in case we want to define a task for somebody, that's the way how we can do it. Here you will provide the description. You can select if we need to have an authorizer, if we want to assign it to a specific person or to a group, for example, all the administrators and so on, and what's the due date. Should be completed in 2 days. Then we can create it. Otherwise, we can set automated actions. So for example, enrichment, containment, custom notification, and scheduled actions. What is the difference? Of course, enrichment is typically for gathering info about a specific IOC, for example, an IP from an external technology. Cloud SOAR will be querying this external technology, and we can select here what is the one to be used, depending on the, let's say, technologies that we have configured and the connectors that we have activated. It's possible to select, for example, in X-Force, we want to reach the IP in X-Force, we want to reach it in domain tools, we want to reach it in recorded future, and so on. And of course, this list depends on the customer subscriptions. What are the services that they have enabled? Now, once the source is selected, you have just to specify where is the input from. I mean, the IP, is it coming from an internal variable? Is it coming from, maybe an example of an internal variable is after querying CSC for additional insight details, or is it inside any of the fields of the incident? You might want to leverage and use some of the fields already existing there in the incident, or it might be the output of one of the actions that we have already executed so far. For example, change status to review. This action has a series of additional output. We might decide, okay, let's take this one and use it as input of this new action, which is for checking the reputation. So that's the way how you can invoke an action, leveraging results of the previously executed action. Of course, this was the example with the enrichment, but if we check for containment and we look for the actions available on an IP, here we don't consider gathering info on this specific IP from external, but applying new policies. For example, blocking IP, and again, here we can select what's the technology, maybe blocking a domain, and again, we might have different technologies, or maybe blocking a URL, for example. So again, the list of the actions that are active here depend on the technologies that you have activated, the connectors that are active and working. Customs, actions classified as custom represents either the option to have your own, let's say, scripts implemented. So for example, if they have, the customer has developed over the years a series of scripts, for example, for blocking an IP, they don't want to connect directly into the firewall console. They prefer maybe just to launch a script that will do a series of tasks and at the end will connect into the firewall console. So those actions can be converted as custom actions with the concept of OIF, Open Integration Framework, and then they can be used inside the playbook. I will explain what is the Open Integration Framework in a while. Similarly, we have notifications, so we can send emails, we can send syslog messages, we can send messages on the typical instant message applications like Telegram, Skype, Slack, and so on. When sending notifications, we can use the concept of placeholders. So placeholders represent the option to include details, let's say actual details of the incident, for example, that is being processed. So for example, the incident ID. So this way, this placeholder at runtime will be substituted by the real ID of the incident. For example, inside 3572 in the example I showed you before. Or here, we can include also placeholders representing the output of the previously executed actions. Remember, at this stage, we have one action already executed named change status to review. Here, we can use either the input, the results, or the output parameters of this action. And here we have all the fields that were returned by this specific action. So this way, I can include the output of that action into this notification. Exactly the same approach applies to sending messages for syslog format or Telegram or whatever. Now, the last type of action is scheduled. Scheduled is an action that checks a condition. Once the condition is satisfied, something will be triggered. Otherwise, there will be an exit condition that will happen after a certain timeout that is part of configuring the scheduled action. So it's typically used for monitoring a condition. Have this colleague reply to my email. Please check for the next 1 hour. If not, please send a default email declaring, since we didn't receive the feedback from the system owner, we decided to proceed with this remediation. So this is implemented with this concept. Okay, along with the actions, we have the concept of operators. Logical gates, conditions, where you can combine multiple different conditions in and or. We have filters for identifying a subset out of a set of records. For example, we query CSC, we get a list of all the insights open in the last 24 hours. We set a filter to consider only the ones classified with severity high. User choice is what I have described previously. You place a question here, we identify what are the possible options, the possible answers, and this question will be posted to the user. So when the playbook will reach a user choice, it will post the question to the user and wait for the user to provide an answer. It's possible to configure to have this answer done through email anonymously. They receive an email with the links. They click on the links, which correspond to providing the answer. Or we can ask them to authenticate in Cloud SOAR first. So they receive the email, click on the link, they will be prompted to authenticate. And then finally, if authentication is okay, that answer will be forwarded to the playbook and the playbook will be completed. Or we can set a timeout declaring, hey, if we don't receive any answer after 2 hours, please go with the answer number 2 as a default. Because of course, sometimes you don't want to remain stuck because the appropriate analysts are not providing an answer. The last option is to invoke a child playbook. So when we select this operator, of course, then the parent playbook will run up to here. Of course, here we can rearrange, for example, the connections, the flow, it's all visual and drag and drop. So the parent playbook will go here in this branch. Reaching this step will pause the parent playbook, launch the execution of the child playbook, complete all the processing, and then resume to the parent. And of course, results will remain available here. So once it's executed, double clicking here, I will have a view into the child playbook. And this is any of the playbooks that are already available there. So whatever is the one that I want to have, I can simply select it. It will be stored there and then executed at runtime. So this is the overall concept of playbooks. As you can see, we have a series of different playbooks. Some of them have been developed intentionally for CSC. For example, this is the one that has been executed with a previous incident, this one, 3572. So enriching the initial insight, distributing a series of notification and updates on the incident, and then progressing with additional analysis, checking if there is a username involved, if there is a host name, if there is an IP. If it's an IP, then it is enriched with these 3 technologies: X-Force, Cisco Umbrella Investigate, VirusTotal. Everything stored into JSON, results propagated back to CSC. And when we read 0, total malicious votes, means that none of these 3 technologies have ever reported this IP as malicious. So how many technologies have been used? That is transparent here. It's transparent at CSC side. In this case, if we want, we can propagate back also the information like X-Force returns 0, Cisco Umbrella returns 0, via Virus Total returns 0. So it's fully customizable depending on the actions that we want to propagate back and the info that we want to propagate back when configuring these specific actions. Okay, that's the story about the playbooks. Now, let's try to understand what is the OIF. I mean, why we have some actions available there to be used for building the playbooks. Everything starts from this section, which is what we call Open Integration Framework, OIF. OIF is a tool for importing all these components. What you read here, if we go back and check what we were checking on the community, for example, CSE, the integration with CSE, if we go back, which is, I think it is here. If we go and search for the integration with CSE, we have here all different 228 integration. We search for CSE, we get this one. You see, these are the actions that we made available. So for example, Sumo Logic Insight Daemon, which is the one that we use for ingesting the alerts. And if we go here, we have Sumo Logic Insight Daemon. This is an action that have been developed. Of course, every customer can use it as it is or can be modified. This, you see, this is the real OIF, which is source code in clear text. It's an IDE, so you can modify, you can save it, and you can run it for testing. To test it, it's all done from here. Just click on the action, insert, for example, the detail, and test it. And you get the results. You can inspect what is the structure of the return JSON, what are the fields, name of the fields, and you can use it for propagating those info back to the rest of the actions. Get Inside is another action that we used for getting the list of the insights. And again, you see something like a bunch of lines of source code. The logic is mostly included here. Typically, all the OIF actions are created with a section receiving the inputs, formatting the call to the APIs, because all our integrations are bidirectional APIs based. So preparing the call typically is an HTTPS request, and then executing this one. You see invoking the endpoint here and managing the results and the exceptions. And then it's just a matter of formatting the output. So from here down, it's just formatting the output of the action to make all the results available for the next actions to be executed. And here you can see that it's possible to add resources and it's possible to add new actions. So it's not monolithical. We can create an integration now with only 2 actions. And then in the next month, we can continue adding over and over new actions based on the use cases that we want to implement. So with this idea in mind, it's pretty simple to identify all the right playbooks that fit with the customer SOP. So the more we dig into discussions with the customer, the more we understand the process, we can refine actions, we can add actions, and we can help them to automate more and more and arrive to a new maturity level from the security standpoint. So this is the concept of, let's say, the OIF. And every time that you upload a new technology and make these actions available, I mean, every time that you upload a new connector, it means that you are orchestrating a new technology and you make these new actions available to be used within inside the playbook for, let's say, configuring the automation. The last item I want to show you is the concept of rules. Rules are what we mentioned as trigger and daemons into the initial presentation. You see that we have the option to define maybe a specific activity, looking for specific alerts where we can configure the filters. So here on the right-hand side, you have the different fields that are part of ingesting the alerts, for example, from the CM, in this case, from CSE. And we can decide, okay, I want to include maybe all the action where I have the description that contains maybe the word, I don't know, malware, something like this. So every time that I have, let's say, an insight, I mean, every day with the frequency of running every day, it will download all the new insights compared to the last run of the daemon. It will check if we have any of them with the word malware inside the description. If it's satisfied, it will perform this action, which means it will convert the alert into a new incident using a template. And the template is named Insight Enrichment. The template is just a set of predefined characteristics that will be assigned to the incident. For example, what is the specific team of investigators? What are the specific playbooks that we want to launch? What is the severity for this type of attacks, and so on. So the best practice is to define a new template for every different type of incidents that we want to process. While converting the insight, I mean the alert, into the incident, we can perform automatically mapping, which means we can migrate values of the different fields of the insight into incident fields. And this is the correspondence. So the insight ID will be stored inside this field on the incident, which is named insight ID. This field named readable will be stored inside the insight name. The tags will be stored inside the incident tags. This way, the enrichment, part of the enrichment that was done inside CSC can be automatically, with a twinkle of an eye, can be made available also in Cloud SOAR. So the concept is to have a win-win collaboration between CSC and Cloud SOAR. Cloud SOAR will leverage what was detected in CSC, the enrichment that was done, will perform additional enrichment, and will propagate results back to CSC. So the analyst working either on one side or on the other side of the technologies, they leverage all these specific results. And this is how the overall, let's say, automation is implemented. So with this concept of rules, and here you can define the different type of rules, for example, different type of daemons, depending on the technologies that you have. We might have a daemon ingesting emails. We might have a daemon ingesting offenses, for example, from an external SIEM. We might have daemons ingesting alerts from Recorded Future, which is cyber threat intelligence platform. So for all of them, you can configure what is the appropriate integration that we want to use, because of course we need, for most of these technologies, we need an additional subscription into their technology. We need to authenticate sometimes through credentials, tokens, certificates, API key, whatever it is. Then we can specify the frequency every 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks, 5 months, whatever. And we can configure the mapping for, let's say, ingesting these details. Once this is configured, everything will initiate every time that we have an alert satisfying the filtering condition that we have here. Of course, if we don't set any filter, it means all the incoming alerts, either they are syslog messages, insights, offenses, emails, and so on, all of them will be processed and all of them will be converted in incidents. The last concept that we have to explore is the concept of template, incident template. This is exactly what I have anticipated. A template is a combination of, let's say, default values that we want to set to the incident that will be created automatically. So for example, if we have an automation rule processing the DDoS attacks, we will set probably the type as DDoS. If we have a different automation rule for the phishing attacks, we will set this as a different value, for example, for phishing. Here, of course, we have a bunch of possible values that are relevant to be set. We have a description. And finally, here we have the link with the possible playbooks. So in this case, you see that every time that this template will be invoked, it will create an incident with these details, and it will activate, let's say, kick off automatically this playbook, which is named CSE Insight Enrichment process. So, and here you have a preview. And for this one, you can set to have it auto run or manually activated, because with some customers, they want to have the incident created automatically after receiving the alert, the playbook attached, but they don't want to launch it automatically because they prefer to have an analyst supervising the whole process. So this is where you decide which level of automation you want to apply. If you set it auto run, as soon as the alert will arrive, it will start immediately, which is exactly the case that I showed you previously with that specific incident. Here, of course, you can add more than one. You can add, for example, 2, 3 different playbooks, and it's up to you to decide if you want to have some of them launched automatically with the auto run, or maybe have them processed manually, so they don't, they won't start automatically without control of the analyst. Of course, anytime you can remove these playbooks, so it's very easy to perform, let's say, tuning of the automation, maybe exploring, creating a temporary playbook. You can attach it, manage a few cases, review the situation, decide that you don't need it, disable, attach another one, refine the playbook, and rerun it. So it's pretty quick to go live in production, leveraging all these functionalities, which are all inside Cloud SOAR. For configuring the system, tuning, testing, and deploying to production, you have to work only from inside Cloud SOAR. We don't need external frameworks, external tools, editors, emulators, whatever it is. It's all done from inside, all through the graphical wizard. Okay, yeah.
I was just going to say, you know, we're at about 5 minutes until the end, and there are a number of questions. So, you know, I don't know if you want to finish up and maybe get to some questions, so we make sure we address those.
Absolutely. So let me just review the question. They created workload on my side. Let me just process it. I think it's just
of
fair.
course.
I think it's just fair. That's why we are here. So first question. So it's CIP, then CSE, then SOAR. Yes. That's typically the architecture. CIP is mostly for log collection, let's say standardizing, deduplicating, basic aggregations. Then we have CSE, which is processing all the different data in the form of, as you know, records, signals, and insights. And then we have the option for ingesting signals and alerts from CSE. So SOAR definitely is built on top of CSE, and that's the ideal platform that we envision. Then let me check another question. The way to track SLA. Okay, SLA and KPI and so on. Okay, we have this section which is named the dashboard. I didn't have time to go through it, but maybe it makes sense. Here in the dashboard, of course, we have a series of graphical widgets for monitoring what's happening inside the SOC and typically inside Cloud SOAR. Monitoring how many incidents, how many playbooks, which type of actions, duration of the different phases, and so on. Here, the playbook is, I mean, the dashboard is fully customizable. So you can decide what are the metrics that you want to represent. We have a bunch of different metrics represented in different layouts. And of course, for every widget, you can configure the relevant parameters. So for example, selecting what's the time frame you want to consider, what's the timestamp of the incident. Do we want to consider the incidents opened in the current month or the incidents closed in the current month? So these are the different metrics that you can configure. You can add filters because you might decide, okay, let's consider all incidents created open in the current year, but I want to consider only the ones belonging to a specific category. So for example, only the ones classified as criminal. So this is the way how you can configure the widget. And here you can decide what are the fields that will be available for the drill down. Because every widget can be double clicked, it will take you inside the appropriate case. So here, for example, you can see what are the different widgets. You can double click, it will take you inside the corresponding detail of the incident, and you can deep your investigation. You can, for example, since there are hyperlinks, you can go click inside this one. That's an incident. It will take you inside. You can see the details, all the characteristics, the playbooks that have been executed, and so on. We have a very granular RBAC, role-based access control. So I need to be assigned to the incident first to be able to view it. I could do it on my own because my account is administrator. If I was just a pure SOC analyst, I would have asked somebody to let me inside this incident. You see now I've been assigned to the investigator team together with this other colleague, Victor Popescu. So now both of us have visibility into this one, the operations, the notes, the playbook, the entities, and so on, everything. So that's the way how monitoring the incidents and building SLA is possible, of course, here. Megan, I think we reached the top of the hour. We have just 20 seconds left.
Yeah, I just saw one more question. I think people are wondering if the infrastructure as code, if you're in another tool, is there any way you could create other playbooks from another tool? And what's your vision for that?
Playbooks can be created only from our platform. At the moment, we don't expect playbooks to be built outside of our platform because Cloud SOAR is pretty sophisticated. When you build a playbook, actually you are building a series of connections behind the scene. Maybe you don't realize what are the ones, but configuring the action, invoking maybe external scripts, passing parameters, and so on. All these should be homogeneous and current with the different structures that we have inside our tools. So we don't expect to have, let's say, the ability to migrate playbooks built with an external tool and import them inside Cloud SOAR. We can easily import new playbooks because, of course, you can define them here from scratch. You can import it from here. You can download it from the community, drag and drop it here, import it, and they will be ready to go. And of course, we can export it also. But at the moment, this is the feature for exporting. But at the moment, we don't expect to have playbooks built with other platforms loaded into Cloud SOAR.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that, Andrea.
I think we have processed all the questions.
I think so. And I think you're at time. So you've done a great job. Thank you, Andrea. And thank you
very much
for joining us. It's great to have everyone.
It was a real pleasure today for me to be here with you. And I hope it was informative, and good luck in future for working with Cloud SOAR. Thank you very much, guys.